Good morning, amazing biz besties, and welcome to our next session. I'd love to introduce you to the amazing Natalia Walker, who's going to share with us her superpower today. Natalia is a woman that greatly collaborates with other women and really does embody lifting other people up. I met her last year at the Bloom Awards, where she was encouraging many women. So welcome, Natalia. Please share with our viewers what your superpower is and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Oh, look, thank you so much for inviting me, Nicole. It's such a privilege because you have such a wonderful group through the Biz Besties. So I've really enjoyed being a part of that group and how you've welcomed me into that group. So thank you very much. So, I mean, obviously you've talked about your superpower of collaboration and obviously lifting women as well. And in terms of my superpower, it's around, I suppose creativity is sort of the field that I work in, but in terms of my actual superpower, I see myself more as a lantern bearer. So my business is called Inner Creative, and I basically see myself as a lantern bearer. I hold a light up and I shine a light so that others can see their truth and see their path forward. And I do that by using creative tools. So you can see one of my mandalas in the background there. And basically, whenever we use colour, imagery, metaphor, symbols, we're tapping into that more expansive part of our brain and more intuitive part. So I help women primarily use those tools in their business planning and their goal setting. So they're actually setting goals that are right and true for them. So I think in terms of what you were saying about superpowers, in terms of your introductions around a lot of these videos, is that everyone has a superpower. And it's about identifying what that superpower is and recognizing it, because we all have them. And these tools that I use basically help women identify their superpowers. And then I've got other tools that I help people actually move forward, because one thing to set your goals, but then it's about getting that momentum as well.
I guess, do you think a lot of women wouldn't see creativity as a superpower within themselves to actually empower themselves in their life?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, also around creativity. A lot of people think, oh, I'm not artistic, so I'm not creative. And look, I think there's been a lot of confusion around those two terms. And look, fair enough, you may not be necessarily artistic. I could probably even argue that you probably are. But in terms of how I see creativity, everybody is born creative. And it's just, we express it differently, and we also express it into different degrees. So there are people that are really tapping into their creativity all the time, go and actually identify themselves as being creative. And so by doing that, they're actually then practicing that muscle. But, anyone, cooking, it doesn't have to be, gardening, all sorts of things. And that's where I found a lot of the sort of interplays between my work and, say, creativity is around really about what brings you joy. And where are you feeling strong? What is your superpower? Because normally when we're feeling in flow, we're, having an awesome time, we're really engaged by what we're doing, we're actually most likely to be innovative, creative. That's when we'll find a solution to a problem that we're having. And that's essentially being creative. So I see a lot of these sort of topics intertwined with creativity. And as I was saying, what I've discovered over time through research and also just practice is that by using colour, by using a coloured pen and writing down things, you're already tapping into that more intuitive part of your thinking. So you're using the right tool for the right type of thinking, really. Yeah.
So those of us that love to go to office work and hoard our coloured pens, we're quite creative.
Yeah.
But I guess I see what you're saying is that being creative is also aligning yourself with creation. You're able to birth a whole lot of new ideas.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. So it's basically creating is bringing something from nothing to something. So whether or not it's a physical object, whether it's an idea, whether or not you've solved a problem for your client, seeing if, the ability to see something that somebody is facing, an issue they're facing, and being able to see a way through it for them. I mean, that's even creation, So it doesn't necessarily need to be an actual physical thing, but bringing something that wasn't there before. And that's where also it's about tapping into your own uniqueness, because we all have our own experiences, our own strengths, our own superpowers, our own perspectives. And so whenever we see a situation, we always bring our lens with it as well. So anything that we create, we'll create it our way, so to speak. So, you know, spaghetti bolognese, like how many different ways of making spaghetti bolognese are there? You know, how many different ways are there of, you know, probably stacking the dishwasher? Like there's a lot of different ways that we can do that, and everyone will bring their unique take on it. And that's why, you know, we can have so many different people in so many different fields, but they're all bringing their unique perspective, their own unique talents, strengths, and different people will naturally resonate with different people. And yeah, so that's how it works. Yeah.
As this is a series, the thing that's been coming through is that we need to embrace being women more. That we've kind of put being women in the back burner.
Yeah.
Do you think in that process of generations or epigenics, or in the process, we've actually put our creativity in the back burner as well? And how do we look for ways to bring it back, or identify that we're actually keeping that, you know, keeping that passion and fire deep down within us instead of bringing it out?
Yeah, well, and yeah, so there's a lot in there. Yeah, I think creativity probably has been given a bit of a bad rap, or in that, you know, it's been associated with art a lot. So if you're not good in art class, then, oh, well, I'm not creative, you know, all of those sort of things. And yeah, as you grow up, whether or not you identify yourself as being creative or not, also in terms of identifying those strengths and playing to them. So yes, you know, and traditionally, look, I had a background in engineering. You know, being creative wasn't really seen as a huge, maybe innovative and problem solving. So, I mean, it might be also the labels that we're using, but, you know, I was already using intuitively a lot of the tools that once I've done the research, I've gone, oh, I was already, you know, color coding all of my lecture notes. I was already doing a whole lot of stuff that, you know, already helped me tap into that part of my brain, that sort of more expansive part of our brains. So I think it's first thing, yeah, cut yourself some slack, you know, in terms of there is not one way of doing everything. And it is, yeah, identifying what your particular strengths are. And as I was saying before, creativity is so linked to joy. So if you find, you know, things that you're really good at, that you find, you know, time stands still, that people ask you, you know, you're the go-to person for something, you know, you can't help yourself from doing things, like not necessarily out of obligation, but, you know, oh, I just can't help, yeah, volunteering, or I really love working with people, and so I really want to collaborate with someone. You know, the things that you can't help yourself from doing, they're all sort of our innate gifts and talents as well. So yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do. And by tapping into, say, if you are a visual learner, so, you know, you need to, if you can't think of a spelling word and you need to write it down, for instance, or you really like having visual information, things like that, then it's about also using those strengths as well to your, you know, to your advantage, really. So it's all about working out what works for you. And that's one of my mantras I use. That's really, yeah.
So there's somebody who's sitting there going, no, I'm a businesswoman, it's all about business. What is something that they could identify that they may not have thought of before to look at?
Yeah. Well, so I've got a lot of tools. I actually wrote down a whole lot of, you know, reflection questions that people could actually use. And once again, it's, you know, a very simple process. And if you are, you know, if any of those things that I was saying about being a visual learner, or that you take in visual information, if that really resonates with you, and also if you're really a hands-on problem solver, so if people, you know, they'll get in there before they read the instruction booklet and they'll start, you know, setting up stuff, and, or, you know, you've got to write something down, you take notes in a meeting without, you never look at them again, but you need to actually take the notes. That's when you're sort of a hands-on kinesthetic. So doing things that are good old analog help bring us back into that space. So, you know, you can sit down, and I actually use, I found, so I've got a whole lot of reflection books I've created, but with my mandalas, I found, so things like, just as soon as you draw a circle, so you could just get a plate, like a cup, it doesn't really matter. But as soon as you write something within that circle, you're already tapping into that sort of more intuitive space. I've created a whole lot of different ones, and these are just Canva templates. But if you don't know the answer straight away, that's the other thing, you need to be really relaxed. So a few deep breaths before you do your reflection. And yeah, colouring in, doodling, once again, you're using the colour, but you're also, once again, calming the mind, getting into that intuitive place. But you can ask yourself questions like, when does time stand still? When do you feel like you're most yourself? What comes easily? Because I think sometimes we forget, like, our ordinary, somebody else is extraordinary, and we sort of downplay our gifts around, oh, that comes easily to me, so that's not really worth anything. Well, actually, no, it is, because you can do it really easily, so it must be a strength.
I think just on that, I think talking about our superpowers and saying that what are your superpowers within the group, people haven't jumped on, because I think they take themselves for granted that they're not aware of their strengths, or they're unaware of their strengths. So that's a really important question.
Yeah. So I think that is, really what comes easily. And so, yeah, what are you the go-to person for? Like, what do you find people asking you about? And what have we talked about for, what can you not help doing? And, things like, what am I good at is not necessarily such a good question, because I think that's where it can blur. We can go, well, I'm really good at this, but sometimes it's because, that whole idea of we play to our weaknesses, not necessarily to our strengths, where, in performance management mindset, where we go, right, all of this stuff you did, great. Oh, but we've got to work on this one because you weren't really good on that. And I think it's about flipping it to go, well, actually, what comes naturally to me? What's good? What can I delegate in terms of the weaknesses? And yeah, it's tapping into those strengths and not necessarily what you're good at, because a lot of the stuff that we're good at, we've either built up a weakness, or we've been listening to what other people are saying. And that's what I really love about these tools. It's about, well, what's actually true for you? Because other people can say lots of things about us, and it's great to get feedback from other people and see, how they see us. But the other thing is, they've got their interpretations, also their expectations. And I think that's another hard thing. As women, we've grown up in a society where we're about looking after other people and looking at their needs first, that we actually forget our own. So yeah, tapping into what do I actually want? Who am I? What am I really good at? They can be really hard questions, because if we're so busy being focused out there, at other people's needs, we don't actually have, we're just not used to necessarily reflecting around our own needs and what we're actually good at. So I think that's why these reflection tools are really nice, just even to have that time to sort of ask that. And yet, once again, even with the what can you not help doing, it's not the stuff you go to they say PTA meetings, but a parents meeting, and you volunteer because you feel inadequate, because you actually want to compensate for something inside you. That's not what I'm talking about when I'm asking, what do you volunteer for? It's the stuff that, look, I do it without being paid because I just love doing it and it feeds me. So yeah, in terms of those sort of questions. But I have also what I call a feelings compass, because I think our body is really good at telling us a lot of information about ourselves and how we're feeling. So when we are feeling strong and powerful, like physically awesome, then we're more likely to be doing those activities that are, we are really good at, and are our superpowers. So, I have a feeling compass, like, how do you want to feel? And it's a really simple tool. Once again, people can draw it for themselves at home. How do you want to feel in the middle? Is it joyful? Is it, I had one client and she has herself riding her bike. The feeling when she's riding her bike, when she's feeling so empowered and in flow and just relaxed, is her sort of key thing. And then, what are the types of things that bring you closer to that feeling? Do more of those. And then what are the things that actually take you away? Like, what are the opposite? When do you feel disempowered? What type of things are not good for you? And that's just a really simple other tool of tapping into those.
I think we are more likely to achieve a goal if we are actually not focused on the goal, but the feeling that we want to feel when we achieved. And then we actually don't feel overwhelmed and being let down as much either.
Yeah. And I think also the feeling also means that we're more open to other possibilities to achieve that. I think sometimes when we go, oh, here's our goal, we're so focused. And look, there's nothing to be said, if you've got a particular output or outcome that you really want, and like, that's fine. But sometimes we can be so focused on this that we don't actually see that there's this out here that's actually, even better for us and will make us feel like that even more. Yeah, definitely.
before, when you're talking about asking the questions to yourself whether you should do things or not, I took on one of the very important questions that will this, what, it's not about the outcome or the achievement, but it's, will it bring me joy? You know, a little bit, you know, if I do it, will it actually bring me joy? It doesn't matter whether I'm good at it or not good at it, but I'm actually at one with it and aligned with it, and I'm actually, you know, zen or whatever feeling that you want. That's the question to ask yourself when you know, start to decide what you're gonna, begin.
Yeah. And it's really starting where you are. I think the other thing is people think superpower, oh, it's going to be big and massive, like, you know, passion. What's your passion? It's like, well, actually, I don't really feel passionate about anything. It's like, all right, well, what are you curious about? What are you interested in? And it's about, I call it following the breadcrumbs. You know, you just one thing, and then that'll take you to another thing, and then another thing. And that's the same thing I think about even with our joy. You know, eventually, yes, you know, we might get to this big feeling of joy, but, you know, it doesn't necessarily need to be that big all the time to identify it. And I think that's another expectation that, yes, we've got to be in Zen bliss, you know, and then, oh, we're living our superpower. But I think it's the steps towards that. Yeah, definitely.
And when we say superpower, it sounds like a big word. And the reason I've asked is, and included all you amazing women, is because it doesn't have to be this amazing, you know, cape wearing Wonder Woman to have a superpower. It can actually be a superpower of resilience or curiosity, you know, and that can be a passion that you actually aren't aware of, you know, and you're in a mode of discovery. That can be a superpower. I think as women, we have lost ourselves a little bit because we don't acknowledge those little things that are superpowers, whether, you know, they don't have to be huge to be acknowledged.
Yeah, and I think we have so many of them as well. I think, you know, there's not just one big thing that stands out. Like I was thinking, so for me, given the space, I mean, I use a lot of metaphors. So for me, like that lantern bearer idea for me is it really resonates for me. But I also see myself, say, as a permission slip. So I help give people permission to go, yeah, look, it's actually okay to think about yourself and your needs and to have a go at that thing that you're, you know, not quite sure about, but really are really interested in. And another one for me is being a believing mirror. So I see myself as being like a reflection that I can see the potential, the possibility in someone that they go, oh, you know, I'm thinking about this, and I can just see that it's lit them up straight away. And I'll go, yes, definitely. That's a clue. Like, pursue that, do that, you know. So they are a little strengths. So whether or not you want, you know, for some people finding a metaphor, you know, they could even go, you know, what's an animal that you identify with, right? And go, right, well, if that animal has a superpower, what would it be? And you even use that as a, you know, a way of plugging into that sort of idea about what it is. And yeah, it doesn't have to be some big massive thing. It can just be, yeah, something small. So, well, and I don't know, actually, I don't know if resilience necessarily is a small thing. I think it's just, they're not necessarily out there type characteristics. They're things that potentially we build on their sort of the internal strengths, I suppose. Yeah, apologies if you can hear building works in the back here. No, okay.
No, we can't hear them at all. What is it that you would like women to know, whether they're in business or just, and not just a mum living their life, raising their children or going to work? Because we, in BizBest, we obviously place importance of women being in business, but women who are mums, who go to 9-to-5 jobs, who support their husbands, they're all, you know, really strong and powerful women as well. What do you tell women as a collective to embrace their creativity?
Well, once again, it's just tapping into what brings you joy, really, what makes you happy, you know, when time stands still, all of those things. And it's about, for me, it's about being comfortable and confident in who you are. And I think that's, for me, what I found when I started this whole, you know, my business adventure, is that in terms of recognizing like what's true for me compared to all the stuff that comes out. So, you know, early in my business, there was so many messages and things out there saying, oh, you should be doing this and you should be doing this. And actually going, well, actually, no, what works for me? Because if it works for you, then you're more likely to actually do it, for one thing. And the other is that then it actually rings as authentic. People know, like we can smell it out. We can't, you might be able to put your finger on it, but you know when someone's not necessarily being authentic. You know, we've got these sort of innate readers in us. And so I think at the end of the day, it's really about tapping into who we are and actually owning it. And I think that's probably the hardest bit. So the first bit is identifying what your superpower is, what brings you joy, you know, how are you creative, how do you express yourself? But the thing is to actually practice it, because it's like anything is like a muscle. And even with the creativity thing, they've done studies where they've gone, it's all about your identity. So as soon as you say, this is who I am, you will be more likely to actually find opportunities to practice that. And you'll actually then incorporate that in who you are and what you do. And then it's sort of that muscle, you know, self-fulfilling prophecy type thing. If you go, yeah, I'm the creative one, then yeah, I'm not afraid to bring my colored pens to my meetings, and that's okay. You know, after a while, then people go, oh yeah, you know, you're the creative one, aren't you? You bring the colored pens to, you know, meetings all the time. And it's just, once again, it's just owning what those strengths are. And I think, you know, I mean, that's my wish really for the whole world, is that, you know, our kids, you know, men and women, all feel that they can be comfortable and confident in who they are and not be afraid of being true to themselves, essentially. And it's a hard thing to do. Like, it's not necessarily easy.
As a society, we judge ourselves probably more harshly, and then we listen to other people's judgments, and it's something that we need to let go of. I guess for me, creativity in my business is when I'm, you know, especially as a procrastination tool, but it's probably not with what you said. I'll sit on Canva and just play and play and play and, you know, make memes because they're colourful and it's relaxing and all of that. It doesn't actually have to be a hands-on, an artistic way, does it, to be creative? It can be whatever, you know,
yeah,
your strengths are.
Yeah, and once again, I mean, I probably would argue that that probably is artistic, because you are, you know, actually bringing a whole lot of design elements in it. But once again, you definitely see, and that's the other thing, we sort of, I think we've also built our culture around in a society in school that we're used to other people telling us what we're good at. Like we get a mark for English and maths, and we're used to getting a report card about ourselves rather than going, well, actually, oh, this feels good to me, and I'm just going to do it intuitively. Because I think a lot of the times, yeah, if you've worked out that Canva works for you and that's what you'll do. And I think a lot of people, when they actually go, oh, is that why I do what I do? Yeah, it is, because you know, we've all got this inner guidance within us, and we mightn't necessarily be able to label it.
I also have my coloured pen.
Yay!
I love a good pen. Thank you for joining us. If people would like to talk to you more, where can they contact you?
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously on Facebook, because that's where they're there watching this.
What's the page called? Yeah,
it's called Inner Creative _ consulting, but they can go to my website, innercreative.com.au. So that's, you know, got the links to, say, my Instagram, all sorts of things, or they can contact me through the website if they've got any questions or anything like that. Yeah.
In the description in Facebook today, Natalia's page will be tagged as well. Natalia, you'll jump in and answer any questions that our viewers may have regarding their creativity and ways that they can embrace that.
Definitely. Yeah, happy to.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers before we jump off?
No, really, just to summarise, I think the discussion we've had today, I think it's about working out what works for you, doing a bit of that reflection around when you feel joy, when you're feeling most creative, because that's probably where your superpower is, and actually starting to practice it and, you know, give it a test out in terms of, you know, like a muscle, because it's about what feels good for you, really. It's just all about feeling good, isn't it?
It really is. All right. So viewers, thank you for joining Natalia and I, and we'll see you at our next session. Thank you.
Thanks.